Good morning, everybody. It's Monday of the fourth week of Easter. I'm going to do two teachings today, one after the other, but they will be separated, so you need to go back to my YouTube page. The first one is based on the text of today, John chapter 10, verse 11 to 18, but some parts of the world will also be celebrating the optional memorial of the feast of the memorial of St. Joseph the Worker. So I'm going to do both the teachings, but separately. So immediately after this, we will be broadcasting the second teaching on the memorial of St. Joseph the Worker. But for today, I want to do John chapter 10, verse 11 to 18. Also, for those who'd like a teaching on Acts chapter 11, verse 1 to 18, just go to the description box as you do every day, and you'll find a link to a YouTube teaching. I've entitled today's teaching, Over My Dead Body, but let's read that to see why I say that. John chapter 10, verse 11 to 18. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, who is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because a hired hand does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason, the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. I have power to lay down. I have power to take it up again. I have received this command from my Father. Again the Jews were divided because of these words, and many of them were saying, he has a demon and is out of his mind. The Gospel of the Lord. Yesterday, my dear friends, if you went to Sunday Mass, we celebrated Good Shepherd Sunday. I said yesterday if you went, because it always bothers me that people don't go on Sunday to Mass. But yesterday was Good Shepherd Sunday, traditionally celebrated on the fourth Sunday of Easter. Now, the Gospel text of today is really a continuation of the Gospel reading that began yesterday. Yesterday we did John chapter 10, verse 1 to 10. Today we are 11 to 18, though I read some part of verse 19. Yet while this may be a very assuring text that we read today, a text of love of the Good Shepherd for us, the reality of this text is that it is within the context of hate towards Jesus. Now, if you really want to see that, look at chapter 9 and look at chapter 11. You see, this discourse, what is called the Good Shepherd discourse, actually emerges out of a conflict with the religious authorities in John chapter 9. This conflict and its related discourse are literally flanked by attempts to stone Jesus. Look at John chapter 8, verse 59. They picked up stones to stone him. John chapter 10, verse 31. Again, they pick up stones to stone him. So John chapter 10 begins literally in the middle of a quotation that started in John chapter 9, verse 41. It's actually a continuation of John chapter 9. Though when we read it, it sounds like a standalone text. It's not a standalone text. It's a continuation of a discourse that is taking place between, or a heated argument that's taking place between Jesus and the Jews. Now, Jesus is continuing a conflict with the religious authorities, which they have started because of the man born blind after Jesus restored his sight. When the authorities cast the man out, you'll remember, they cast him out. Jesus goes and looks out for him. He finds him, and Jesus receives him as his own. Jesus receives him as his sheep. And within this context, one therefore can clearly identify that Jesus is the Good Shepherd. He declares it with one of those famous seven I am statements, when he says, I am the Good Shepherd. I am the Good Shepherd. Now, The bad shepherds, also referred to in the text as the hirelings or the hired hands, therefore are clearly the Jewish religious establishment at the time of Jesus. The best way to approach this text is through a method, therefore, of compare and contrast, a method used by Jesus himself in this very text. Compare the good shepherd, compare the bad shepherds. Contrast the good shepherd, contrast the bad shepherds. Now, the text begins by telling us that Jesus, the good shepherd, lays down his life for his sheep. A point that is repeated 5 times in 8 verses of our text. 5 times, I lay down my life for my sheep. In short, Jesus was saying, there is no way the wolves can get to my sheep, not over my dead body. That's what he's saying. And this is key to understanding the mission of Jesus and his salvific role. He has come to die for us, to rescue us from the bondage of sin. For many, the cross is a tragedy. The cross was not a tragedy. The cross was a strategy. It was a strategy. By laying down his life, he defeated Satan. It was a strategy. And this embracing of the cross was not forced upon him by the Father. But as he declares in the text of today, he says, no one takes it. That is, no one takes his life from him. But he says, I lay down my life of my own accord. I have the power, he says, to lay it down. I have the power to take it up again. Of course, this taking it up again is clearly a reference to the resurrection. This clearly is the primary mission of the Good Shepherd. But there are other characteristics of a Good Shepherd that Jesus also wants to draw our attention to. Let me give you some. Jesus says, I know my own and they know me, which is also important. I know my own, my sheep know me. So there is a mutual recognition of the sheep and the shepherd. You remember that on Easter Sunday morning, Mary of Magdala recognized the voice of Jesus. Jesus will say to us that his sheep hear his voice. While the shepherd knows the sheep, it is also for us, the sheep, to know Jesus, the shepherd. We may think of sheep ourselves as being all the same. Oh, we are all the same. Yet, not so for Jesus. Jesus, the Good Shepherd, knows that we are individuals with our own personalities, with our own characteristics, and he deals with us according to our individual needs. That's how intimate is the knowledge of Jesus with each one of us. But it demands that we have an intimate knowledge of him also. So finally, we need to watch out also for the bad shepherds. Their characteristics are more than evident in this very lengthy description that Jesus gives us. He says, first, they are not the owners of the sheep. They may claim to be owners of the sheep, but they are not. He says they run away in times of danger. They abandon the sheep to the wolves. And as a consequence, what happens when they abandon them? The sheep are scattered and some are even snatched away. The bad shepherd does not lay his life for his sheep. All the bad shepherd is doing is protecting himself. Now, the Jewish religious authorities listening to Jesus clearly knew that he was speaking of them. And as I said earlier, in John chapter 10, verse 31, they will take up stones again to stone him. My dear friends, this text draws attention to both the sheep and the shepherds of the church. While the sheep must know the shepherd, recognize his voice, and know which gate to enter, the shepherds, and here I speak of the clergy, have a clear calling to protect their flock. That very title, pastor, pastores in Latin, translates the same ancient Greek word used here for shepherd. It is a title that is only rightfully earned. It's not granted and should not be assumed. And so today, while I ask you to pray for your shepherds, I ask you to challenge your shepherds. Challenge them to feed the sheep, tend to the sheep, to protect the sheep. And one of the greatest ways we can do this as shepherds is to defend what the church says against the world. I know I've been saying this again and again, but I say this because over the last few months, I feel very convicted that we are not protecting doctrine and dogma. We are not protecting the church as much. And I can see that the great price that the Anglican Church is paying for its views, literally being divided. For those of you who've been following this, watch GAFCON, which is being held in, I think it is in Mali in Africa. I may be wrong about the country, but right about the continent. And you can see the turbulent discussions that are being held because the shepherds now all have different doctrinal views. Today I want to pray for my friends Achit and Anushka, whose wedding I blessed several years ago on this day at Mount Mary's Basilica. They now live in a small little nondescript village called Pau. It's about half an hour away from Lourdes in France. And I know I was supposed to visit them last month, but that never happened. Somehow my trip to Lourdes seems to elude me, but I know in God's time it will happen. Thank you everybody for joining me, for watching this video. Remember that immediately after this video we are going to broadcast the next video, because today is the feast of the memorial of St. Joseph the Worker. Bye for now. Don't forget to like this video and watch the second one too.